Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Let's Talk It Out podcast. I'm your host, TreyBizzy, also known as Alec Liftshops to most people. I want to thank you guys all for coming in tonight, being able to sit down and join the conversation in the chat room. Tonight is going to be a very good episode because I have a very special guest tonight. But before I get into that, I just want to make sure I thank Chaz again for coming on last week. Chaz episode received a lot of downloads. He received a lot of positive feedback. Everybody loved his conversation and his openness and how transparent he was with what's going on with him and his issues. Hey, what's going on, Justin? Everybody who's here in the chat room, go ahead and sound off a little bit. Let us all know who you're here. So, like I said, I'm not alone tonight. I got a special guest tonight, man. This guy is a journalist for U.S. Today. He owns his own show on Bear's Barroom called Buffone 55. This guy is a boxer. He's an ordained minister, media personality. Apparently, he's an avid hunter, man. I want to welcome John Buffone to the Let's Talk It Out podcast.
Hey, Busy, how you doing? I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Man, I want to thank you for being able to come on tonight, man. And I want to thank you for being open to having the conversation tonight that a lot of people are afraid to have.
Absolutely, and we were talking before the show. I mean, this show's important, but I mean, the conversation's important, and you make progress every day if you can, keep the conversation going, and you stop that progress the second we shut up about it. So it's important to keep that conversation going, and I'm excited to be a part of it tonight.
Yeah, so I mean, we're gonna go ahead and hop right into it. John, you've done live media. This show is live. This is very live. A lot of people always ask me personally. They say, like, Trey, are you anxious about it, or hey, do you get nervous? And the answer is absolutely yes. I do get anxious. I do get anxiety sometimes from the thinking about being on a live show. That's normal. It's normal because you don't want to make any mistakes. You want everything to go smoothly and you want everything to go right. And even John, who has much more experience with me, he even told me that he deals with it. John, go ahead and give people a little bit of a detailed background about that.
I kind of have it just throughout the day: social anxiety, anxiety about getting things done, and it's funny because I feel the most comfortable when I have a microphone in my hand. I feel the most comfortable whenever I was on live TV or live radio or on the live streaming on the internet. It's one of those hiding in plain sight kind of things where throughout my entire normal day I'm full of anxiety, but the second that the lights go on, I feel like I can flip the switch and be somebody else, and that's kind of my escape is in front of everyone. So I think that it's important to find that thing that kind of makes the anxiety kind of just disappear and kind of just drain out of you. And it has to be a healthy thing. I mean, you can't, obviously there's avenues that can be dangerous to try to block out anxiety. So you find that thing that really, makes you feel comfortable. It makes you feel like you don't want to, that you do kind of just block out all those other things that were on your mind for that day. So mine happens to be being in front of people. I like being in front of people, and when I'm in front of people, that anxiety goes away. It's kind of interesting. It's I can't explain it, but everyone's brain's wired differently, and you gotta find what works for you.
Sometimes in order to defeat the anxiety of something, you have to just face it. Is basically what John's saying. Sometimes if you're afraid of something or something makes you nervous, just do it, man, and see what happens. Nine times out of 10, it's going to turn out better than what you imagine, for sure.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, I mean, I was super anxious the first time I thought, because I've always loved boxing. It's always been my favorite sport. It's always been something that I love the Bears. That's probably my biggest passion in the world, is Chicago Bears. But as far as like a sport that I just grew up loving, it was boxing. And the thought of me getting into boxing was always exciting, but it's also made me filled with anxiety, because I'm like, okay, if I get in that ring, I'm gonna get hit, and this is the entire spot. The entire point of this sport is getting hurt. And so, the first time that I really started training seriously, I just said, basically, I mean, for lack of a better term, F it, I'm going in. And I went in, and all you need sometimes is 5 seconds of blind courage, and it can change everything. Now, I mean, it's second nature to me. I still don't like getting hit; it doesn't feel good, but I still get a little bit anxious before I do it. But it was that anxiety that was keeping me from ever actually being serious about it. It was the anxiety that kept me from doing something that I always wanted to do, and I wished I would have just said, F it years beforehand. But like I said, you just need that couple seconds of blind courage to say I'm doing this, and once you get past that block, I don't want to say it's smooth sailing, but it's a hell of a lot easier, man.
It's definitely a hell of a lot easier. Now, he's saying blind courage. People, I don't want that to be misconstrued with liquid courage.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No, trust me, I wasn't drinking before I got in the ring or anything like that.
Some people, need liquid courage to make the jump towards something. But
Right.
as far as boxing goes, like you just do that for fun. That's just amateur boxing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did a little like club sport in college, which was I won't say how many long ago, but it probably about that would have been about 7, 8 years ago. And then I kind of just got away from it. I started turning, I got into my career, and I was still doing some boxing workouts and stuff like that. And then finally, I turned 30, and I was like, man, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do this, and what's keeping me from doing it? I'm getting older. I'm not. How many great boxing years would I actually have left? So I just threw myself into it. I went to this boxing gym. There's a trainer there who is actually, one of Bud Crawford's cornermen. He goes out to Vegas every couple of weeks to, be a cornerman in Vegas. Great guy, great trainer, and just said, listen, I'll give you what you need to do. And I've been doing that for about 6, 7 months now, and he's preparing me to get on the amateur circuit to actually get some fights. I'm sure my job isn't thrilled about that, but I mean it's getting to the point where this is something I've always wanted to do. And I'm 30 years old, and I'm throwing myself into the amateur ranks of boxing with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids. So I say kids, but they're grown men athletes sometimes. But it's something and you're never too old to do something that you want to do. I mean, I'm 30, but I'm gonna be an amateur boxer. That sounds wild, but if I wouldn't have, I'm gonna be 50 and wishing, damn, why didn't I just try it? What was the worst that was gonna happen? Why didn't I just do it? And so I'm glad that that blind courage, not liquid courage, that blind courage came through and just say, just go do it. Just do what you want to do. Do this thing that you've always wanted to do.
Now, John, with you being a media guy, of course they wouldn't want you to get into a boxing ring and get your face hurt or something like that. They don't want you to come in and be reporting with like a crooked nose or something like that.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because before I took my job with the USA Today network, I was a television reporter. So that was for about 2 years. That was completely off the table. There was no boxing that could be done there because I was going on live TV every day. I was doing reports, from the studio out in the field, and I was anchoring and stuff like that. So sometimes there's not enough makeup in the world to cover up a black eye if you get popped pretty good, or there's no makeup that's going to cover up a crooked nose either. So I think that I think that it was that was off the table for 2 years. But once I got back in the newspaper and I didn't have to be pretty all the time. It was easy to just say, okay, this is what I got to do. I'm doing this. I'm just gonna go do it, because if not, I'm gonna be thinking, man, what if? Whenever I'm 40, 50, and 60.
Now, John, with the media thing, I want to ask you, because we said earlier that we deal with anxiety sometimes when we get on and go live on these shows or go on TV or radio or whatever we're doing. But I want to go back a little bit. Like, tell me about the first time you could ever remember in your life that you dealt with anxiety.
Oh, wow. I mean, since I was a little child. I mean, I've always had social anxiety. I don't know, maybe it was because I don't know if it was self-esteem issues, because when I was younger, I was kind of a heavier kid, and I mean, I grew up in a great family, and I don't ever want that to get twisted about anything. I grew up in a fantastic family that was always supportive, and I was very lucky in that aspect that I had such a supporting family. But sometimes it doesn't matter what's around you. You feel the way you feel, and sometimes because when I was growing up and I dealt with some issues in my teenage years, I was afraid to talk about that, because if I told somebody that I was feeling depressed or if I was feeling anxiety, I thought to myself, they're going to think that I'm crazy. They're going to think that, why is this guy upset? This guy has no reason to be depressed. Look at it. Listen, I was a varsity athlete in high school. I was homecoming king. I was class president. I could do whatever I want. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but this does have a point to it. I was probably one of the more popular kids in my entire high school. So if I told somebody that I was depressed, or I told somebody that I had anxiety, or there was something wrong, I was afraid they were going to say, look at this kid whining about it. What does he have to whine about? He has everything, and he's whining about something, or he's sad about something. So that was a barrier for me to talk about it. And that all that did was make those feelings build up more and more. And I was depressed, and I didn't know why I was depressed. And then I got even more depressed because I kept all of those feelings suppressed within me. So as I'm going to school, I was voted class clown. Go figure. So I was always in there making jokes, and I was being happy. And some of the most depressed people in the world are the ones that try to make you laugh all the time, because that's their cover, or they know what it's like to feel sad, and they just try to put on a good front for everybody else. So that's kind of what I was doing when I was 15, 16, and 17. And up until a couple years ago, I really didn't talk about this too much, but when I started covering, this was probably 5 years ago, I was covering high school sports, and there was a softball player for this local team, and she took her own life. She was 16 years old. She took her own life, and there was a lot of surrounding things around there, but it was there was a boy involved, and but then I saw this suicide, and I thought, I'm tired of seeing this. I'm tired of always seeing these teens think there's no way out other than to take their own life. So I brought my own story to the table. I wrote about my story. I wrote about my brush with contemplating suicide. I was 17 years old. I walked into my family owns a couple acres of woods. I walked into my favorite part of my family's woods, and at that point, I had a firearm with me, and I was wondering whether or not my life was worth living. I was a 17-year-old kid contemplating whether or not my life was still worth living. And I remember my body just breaking down at that point, falling to the ground. And you can call it divine intervention. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it freezing at the moment, but you can call it whatever you want. My body froze up, and I walked out of the woods, and I walked home, and that was a very rough experience. So I wrote that story, and when I wrote that story and it went in the paper, and it went in papers all across the Mid-Atlantic region, that was the first time my parents ever heard about that story. My mom heard that story for the first time. I gave her a day in advance. I said, "Hey, Mom, there's a story coming out tomorrow, and I just want to give you a heads up that this is what it is." So I gave her an advance copy of the story. And she was, of course, heartbroken. She blamed herself. She said, "What did I do wrong?" And there's nothing she did wrong. But whenever you're 15, 16, 17 years old, you don't have that abstract reasoning. If you're a teenager, you think, if I'm gonna feel bad now, I feel bad forever. Or if this hurts now, this is going to hurt forever. And teenagers don't have that long vision of things are temporary. It's always that this hurts, this sucks, this is always going to suck. My life is always going to be sad. And I think that's why we see these kids, they're kids, taking their own lives because they don't think that there's any other way out. So to bring this all full circle, I realized that just talking about it made me feel so much better. I wasn't depressed, or my depression was, it could have been contained, or it could have been alleviated just by talking, I think, because once I did, I felt so much better. But because I never talked about it, because I didn't feel like I had a reason to talk about it, that made me feel like almost to the point where I was considering taking my own life. And just by talking about it, it was incredible that all of that just alleviated. I didn't need to go on medication. I didn't need to, be in, intensive therapy. I just needed to talk. I just needed to find somebody and say, "Listen, this is how I feel. I don't know why I feel it, but this is how I feel." And I realized that once I started doing that, and I was more open about doing that, and I realized that, listen, I may have all this stuff going for me, but it's still okay to be upset sometimes. Whenever you break a leg or you you hurt your shoulder or anything like that, what do? You go to the hospital, and you can. But the problem is, that's physical health. With mental health, you can't just put it up to an X-ray and say, "Oh, there's your problem." But you still need to go to the hospital, or you still need to see somebody, or you still need to talk to somebody, because mental health is just like physical health. It's just a little harder to treat sometimes, and there's sometimes a stigma attached to it. So it's important to understand that your mental health is just as important as physical health, if not more, and that there is no problem going to talk to somebody, even if it's a friend, even if it's a family member. Hell, if you need a therapy dog to talk to, go do that. Whatever drains that feeling from you, where it's this tight feeling in your chest that says, I can't talk to anybody about this because of this reason or that reason or any other reason. You got to get past that and find your outlet. You gotta let the levee open and let all that rush out of you, because if not, it keeps building and building and building, and eventually you might make a decision that you never would have made if you just would have talked to somebody about it in the first place.
John, I just want to tell you that you are incredibly brave. You said that eloquently. Everybody in the chat room loves you. Brittany says she's glad you're still here. Tequila says she's glad you're still here. I just want to say that one point that you made really spoke out to me, because that's literally why I started this podcast. You said, just talking about it made me feel so much better. What's the name of this podcast? Let's Talk It Out. Mm-hmm. That's literally what it's about. Sometimes just sitting down and having a conversation with people, coming into the chat room, saying what's on your mind, letting it out, letting everybody know what's going on with you. And it's just it's like a community I'm trying to build, man. Everybody here, mm-hmm. We all have something in common. What do we all have in common? We're not afraid to speak up about our issues or speak up about our past or talk about what we're battling every day. That's what it's all about, man. That's literally what it's all about. I don't want anybody out there to feel like they're alone and there's nobody that they relate to just because their friends or family don't understand them. There are billions of people in the world. Do you mean to tell me out of billions of people in the world, nobody relates to you? Nobody's dealt with the same thing that you dealt with? Like I said, sorry, John, but a couple weeks ago, Max lives in Vietnam, and as we were having our conversation, me and Max found out that we had more in common. This guy is from Portland, Oregon. It's a white dude from Portland, Oregon, and I'm a black man from Chicago, Illinois, and we have so much in common. It don't matter about where you are. It don't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter your nationality, how you were raised. We all have the same type of brain. It deals with the same stresses as everybody else, and there are people out there that deal with you and understand the same thing that you are going through. Justice said everyone be telling the next person what to do in their own shit, which is forever correct. But listen for once. Most people just have to hear themselves out loud. The answer is always within the words they share. We don't hold any answers for the next. Dan says, in high school, I found something I'm super passionate about, but I've been told that there's no future in what I want to pursue. Since no one else saw a future in it, I started thinking it wasn't worth it. It wasn't until about a year or two ago that I decided to do it. You don't see a future in it because you don't have a future in it. I'm creating my future. Since then, I've been training my ass off through a few setbacks, but I will be a force in the fitness industry. It may not be in your future, but it will be in mine. Amen to that.
Nice.
Glad it says. That's how I feel most of the time. No one to talk to. Not anymore. You shouldn't feel like that anymore, because guess what? I'm building a community. Justin says, I'm always here to chat or listen, always. And yes, he is. Me and Justin text each other back regularly. Justin also says, someone feeling validated for once in their life and not being told what to do is usually where the magic begins to happen. We all been going through it. Spank up a feel that conversation. Someone connect. Y'all going to help each other through the moment of darkness. 100%. Everybody, we're uniquely unique. I mean, everybody. The chat was going crazy. Someone said it's crazy for a long time. Counseling or classes or talking to someone for me meant that there was something wrong. And well, there was something wrong, and I've been going through it, these things lately. But I have been in classes, and hey, it's okay. But I love this. It's about we need to talk it out. That's just, man. Look, the chat room. You had the chat room on fire, man.
Good. That's what we're here for.
Tequila says, I'm glad you're not letting anyone hold you back any longer. Dan, yeah, Dan, fuck what everybody else think about you, man. It's your life. Omar says, we are humans before we are anything else, regardless of race, gender. Struggles and stressors are the same regardless. Boom.
That's right. And just to kind of go off of that point, I found that when I started talking to people about this, that gave them the courage to say, you know what, I also am going through this. So not only sometimes does your conversation make you feel better, it also gives people the courage to come out with their own problems. I can't tell you. I mean, there's a number of times where I said, listen, I would talk about my depression, or I would talk about my anxiety, or talk about what I was feeling, and they're like, listen, man, I'm going through the same thing. And then they would tell me all the issues they were going through. They would tell me what's going on in their family, or they're going on with their relationships. And sometimes you just need that person to break the ice, just make that first connection. And then that gives somebody the courage to come up, and then you really have a conversation going.
Man, it just takes that one voice, and someone like you, John, like someone they look at you, they don't expect you to have anxiety, they don't expect you to be depressed about something. Like you said, you have all those accomplishments, homecoming king, prom king, great bloodline, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, they don't look at you and they say, this guy has a perfect life, and that's the issue, man. That's the issue. Richard was a guest before a long time ago. He said, we always look at someone's life and look at what they have and look at what we don't have. For example, you see someone who's married looks at somebody who's always going on vacations with their friends and stuff, having a good time, enjoying themselves. But the person who's always with their friends look at this person who's married and says, man, I wish I had a family and stuff like that. We always look at someone else's life and think about what they have, what we don't have. That's why people most of the time aren't happy.
Right. Yeah, and you don't think about what they, if you envy somebody, you also aren't thinking about what they don't have, though. And then I think people often focus on what I don't have, as opposed, and that's I mean, that's human. I do the same thing. I think about what I don't have, but then it's important to come back and think about what you do have and what you do have going for you, because you realize that if you sit back and you make a list, or you kind of compartmentalize everything and think about the good things in your life, you don't think about them until you make it a point to think about them. And then you realize that, your life isn't full of all this misery, and there isn't a bunch of, bad things going on. You actually have a lot going for you, but it takes the time to think about it. And sometimes it takes the courage to talk about it. Saying it out loud a lot of the times has so much more power than just thinking it. To literally say it to somebody and hear it come out of your mouth and hear it out loud can have so much more of an effect than just thinking about it, or you contemplating things. Saying it really has an effect.
Saying it and living by it, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go by a little bit more of the chat room. Chat room's still going. How he says, truth shall set you free. It happens always when you talk about it. It feels great. Air Jerry says, it's the human experience. It's rough out there sometimes. I try my part to be there for someone, and sometimes you deal with others and neglect yourself. I'm guilty of that big time. Omar says, some people just want someone to listen, and just that. No judgment, no critique. Exactly. Sometimes you just want someone just to listen to what you say without worrying about them judging you or feeling differently about you. And again, everybody in this chat room right now, we're all dealing with things. We all have things going on in our lives. And no one in this room or in this chat room is going to judge you. I'm not going to judge you because my life is far from perfect. But like John said, sometimes you have to focus on the good things in your life and hold on to those and just completely block out everything that's negative and focus on what makes your life worth living. That's all I'm saying. Heidi says, I'm extremely happy I made it on time, Trey and John. Yes, you did make it on time. You hopped in right at the perfect time. Justin says, saying it out loud, it doesn't have power over you anymore. Ashley said, the hardest part is actually talking about it, and the easiest too. Once you start talking, and that's when it becomes really easy. It becomes like a water fountain. Tequila says, finding someone genuine to talk to, that's the hardest part for me. Tequila is a whole chat room full of people. Just pick one and add them and talk to them. Trust me.
Yeah, and I think that's important. And just to kind of take this to another level, because I'm tuned into the the sports industry, and I've dealt with a lot of athletes, and I think as sports fans or people in general that pay attention to what's going on, we see a lot of the times athletes sometimes get depressed after their playing days, or they make poor decisions, or they get involved in drugs, or they lose all their money because they develop gambling addictions or things like that. And that isn't just because athletes are bad with money and they blow it all. Sometimes it comes down to let's just say, put yourself in an athlete's shoes for a second. If you were really good at a sport, let's say you're a football player, you were the best elementary school football player, you were the best Pop Warner player around, then you were the best high school football player ever around, and people knew you as this football god. There's John, the football.
Now, when you
legend.
say who, you mean me or
no?
or,
In general.
No,
in
okay.
general.
I'm just messing with you.
Well, I assume you, but I mean, I think that goes without saying. But to say you've always been the best football player in high school. Then all of a sudden you go to college and you're Mr. Football in college, and then you go to the NFL and you're like, oh man, there he is, professional football player. And some of these guys, that's their persona. That's their identity. And then when they retire, they're not looked at as the Mr. Football anymore. And then they have to start looking back and think, well, who am I? And if you're not on the football field or any other field for that matter, then you lose yourself. You lose your sense of identity. You lose who you are. And I think that can sometimes lead to a lot of bad feelings, depression, substance abuse, other addictions. And that's why whenever I talk about these kind of things, I say it's so important to have a diverse set of interests, because whenever my body broke down, and that was very early in my life, I've had a slew of injuries. I knew I was never going to play professional anything because my body was broken down by the time I was 17, basically. So I knew that was not going to be an issue. But I had to find, but I love so many different things that I used to think that, and some people still think this, that if you have a ton of different interests and a ton of different passions, then you're a jack of all trades, but you're a king of none. And I don't see it that way, because I think to have all of these interests and all of these passions, I mean, when I look back at myself in 50 years or however many years, I say I was an athlete, but I was also a writer. I was also a TV personality. I was also an ordained minister who performed a wedding at one point in his life. I was a boxer. I was a poet. I was a singer. I was a wedding singer at one point. I was a hunter. I was a fisherman. I want to have as many passions as possible because I want these things all to elevate me as a person. I don't ever want to lose something like that. Whenever my physical body breaks down and I can't do something, I want to be able to have all these other passions going on so I don't lose my sense of identity, so I don't lose who I am as a person. So it's important also for a lot of these people who are one-track minds, who are people who think that they have one thing going for them and that's going to carry them through their entire life, whether it's, being a lawyer, whether it's being an athlete, whether it's being anything else. Don't let that define you, because if you let that define you and it leaves, then you have nothing. And it's very, very important to be diverse and enjoy the world around you and take passions in art, take passions in music, take passions in anything and everything. So in case something does eventually go away, you have so much more that you can throw yourself into.
The more you diversify yourself with, the less time you have to think about what's not right in your life. The more you have going on, the more activities, the more active you are. And that's how people ask me how I deal with anxiety. I'm always in the gym, man. I always let it out. I let it out.
And that's a healthy outlet, man.
The gym, music, and reading, man. It's something about making my mind wander, like working my mind, reading something and trying to understand and learn new things. There's something about that just completely it enables my body to focus on something that's like uneasy to me. Like when I'm focusing on reading and learning, I don't have time to be anxious because I'm focusing on what I'm reading. I'm trying to figure out what this is, what's going on, what's next. I'm trying to comprehend what's going on. Justin says writing. Writing is definitely a good way. Writing and creating. I used to blog a lot for Bears Barroom. That's how I was introduced to podcasting. I started off just as a writer for them, and writing definitely helped me out a lot. We're in a chat room trying to build we're building a community now. Everybody's giving each other virtual hugs, and it's just we're all in there together. Everybody saying, talk to me if you need anybody to talk to. Ashley says, I'm a lady of many passions too. It's been a struggle to express it because my support system, quote unquote, only encouraged me to do what they want me to do. And you know what, man? It's not about what they want you to do. You have to do what you're passionate about. You have to do what makes you happy. Number one,
your life.
It's your life. It's not their life. At the end of the day, At the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself first before you take care of others. Granted, I know we all have family and friends, but you can't take care of somebody else if you're not in the right state mentally. Tequila says poetry, learning, and reading works for her. Dan says, I heard Jim getting ready to head there now. Brittany says, you're a great writer, Alec, for real. Come on, don't gas me up, man. I ain't used to that. You had something to say, John?
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's also can be, for people that might have self-esteem issues, it's also fun. I don't want to say fun, but it's also, gratifying sometimes when people come across me. Listen, I'm 6'2", 230 pounds. I'm a big guy. I look like John Cena for the most part whenever I've been so it's fun sometimes to throw a curveball to these people. So whenever we're having a conversation and all of a sudden I reference Kierkegaard's theory of existentialism, they're like, what the hell is that about? It's a weird curveball to say, listen, this guy, if you look at me, you sometimes see me as a meathead or a guy that's just in the gym all the time and maybe doesn't have the most intelligent thing to say in a conversation. But if you're able to show how well-rounded you are, that in itself can give you so much self-esteem, because I love to write, I love to read, I love to cook, I love to do all these things that aren't necessarily portrayed with my appearance, but because I can do that, I feel better about myself, because I think the more skills you have or the more things that you think that you are capable of, you're not doing that for anybody else. I don't care if anybody I know knows how I know how to cook or I write poetry and anything like that. But I know I can do it, and that I know that I have these kind of passions. So that helps my self-esteem, knowing that I have all these different diversified skills. Because whenever somebody sees me, they just say, "Oh, there's a guy. I bet he's really into his bench press." And which I am, by the way. I can right around 400, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay.
Anyway,
John. Okay, we're not trying. You're not trying. It's not a dating website, all right? You're not trying to sell yourself, okay? We get it, man. We get it, all right.
You impressed? You should be.
A little bit, man. But cooking.
I'm kidding.
Look. Hey, cooking should be something that every adult knows how to do.
Well, yeah, but you'd be surprised how many don't.
That's true. So Gladys says, I think it's hard for me because I've had so many friends I thought I could always count on, but life happened, and now I have an extremely hard time trusting people. That, along with my pride, makes it hard for me to trust other people with my feelings. I wish I had someone to talk to, but it's hard because I hate feeling weak, and I'm scared of trusting someone with my feelings. I don't want to show someone who might not really care my vulnerability. Gladys, this have you not heard me and John the whole night? I've never heard him talk like this before, ever. This guy has opened up to us. He brought it all out there. He talked about his anxiety, his deepest, darkest depression. The man told us he's about to kill himself in the wood. Like, this is literally about being open and honest with each other. That's what it's about. You don't have to feel vulnerable. Justice says, learning that no amount of influence can influence someone's outside myself. Existence is simply a mirror. It reflects our real face, whatsoever it is. If we are covering our face with a mask, the mask is reflected. Man, the Air Jet said I used to drive and crank music loud to zone out and get away. Anxiety is something I honestly never experienced until 2 years ago. Divorce and abrupt life changes really brought it up. I try to do it every day to get better at how I deal with things. Man, music. I'm telling you, what we say earlier, John. Music is just, it's the basis of life, man. Like, without music, life will not be the same. Music is for every mood that you're feeling, no matter what it is.
100%.
You can find a song that literally finds your mood.
And I told you this before we went on the air. When I was in college, I had 3 posters in my room. One was Michael Jackson, one was Dean Martin, and the other one was Tupac. So that shows you that, man, moods can change, and with those moods, so can the music. There's something for everything.
So apparently there's ladies in the chat room. Brittany says, I can't cook and I'm married. Wow, we gotta get her an achievement award, like on PlayStation. You get an achievement unlocked, being able to get a man to marry you without being able to cook. Because I can't marry somebody who can't cook. I'm sorry, man. That's that's dead. I'm just saying. They're laughing at her. Natty says, I definitely find myself doing that sometimes. That's all you need to let it out, and sing along will let it out. That's true. The music, man. Music in the gym helps me out with anxiety so much. I still battle it, man. Like, I find myself sometimes at the gym, I'll be in the middle of a set, and all of a sudden I'll just feel it on setting. just out of nowhere. Like you'll feel it just slowly coming on, and I always try to catch it and tell myself like, no, I'm not about to feel this right now. I'm in the middle of working out. Now it's not time for this to be happening to me right now. Now it's not time for me to deal with it.
Yeah, and there's been times throughout my life. I mean, just because I'm not in as dark a space as I was whenever I was a teenager, that doesn't mean that I still don't deal with these things. Like I told you, I still deal with anxiety quite a bit, and it's actually it's leaked into keeping me from sleeping. I think that I think sometimes my anxiety. I think everybody can relate to that. When you lay down in bed at night and you're kind of alone with your thoughts, your anxiety can go through the roof because everything gets magnified times a million when you're laying in bed at night and you're thinking like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this tomorrow? Do I have time to do this? Oh my God, is the stove on? What am I having for lunch tomorrow? Everything gets magnified by a million when you're laying alone with your thoughts, and so it's actually kept me. I mean, it's really dug into my sleeping patterns sometimes. So and it can jump up at any time. There's times when I'm driving and it's just like, oh my God, like you can feel that anxiety rising in you. It's a physical feeling. I mean, as much as we're talking about mental health and its effects, sometimes you can physically feel it in your body. You can feel it, the tension rising. You can feel it in your chest, and you gotta be willing to go through the motions and make sure you put that away. Whether it's calling somebody or pulling over to the side of the road and taking some deep breaths, or putting some some music on, or calling a therapist or anything like that. Don't ignore it, because that's when things get completely off the rails.
Yeah, when you feel it on setting, man, you have to catch yourself. Otherwise, you could potentially. A good friend of mine told me that his anxiety was so bad that he ended up having a stroke from it.
Yeah.
You can't ignore those things, man. You have to take care of yourself. You have to do whatever it takes to calm yourself down. And I've said this before a long time ago. I'm gonna bring it up. I read a book, a self-help book, and I quote literally the title of this book says, "Hardcore self-help fuck anxiety book," written by Robert Duff. He has a PhD. And inside this book, he says that he gives a technique that I use to deal with anxiety. It's called you take a piece of paper and you write down three dots. Right. The first one is what's going on when anxiety is on setting. Like, what are you doing? And then you write down what are you afraid of. Like, you write down what you're doing. Like, say you're driving the car, you write down, you pull over, write down, I'm driving the car, anxiety's coming, and you try to figure out why is it happening? Like, what are you afraid of, or what's making it happen right now? You write that down. And then the third one is you write down, is it possible for that to happen to you? So with that technique, it helped me literally conquer, because there was a point where my anxiety was really bad, man. It was like, it's the point where I just struggled because I used to think it was going to come on. But once I learned that technique from Robert, from that book, it literally helped me get over it. I've literally have a lid on it for the most part. Every now and then, you're still going to experience it, but for the most part, I have a lid on it just from reading that book. So,
and it's important to have a process like that. You go to something that if you go through the process, at the end of it, you're going to feel better, and that's just an invaluable tool that you can't put a price on. To know that if you go through something that's going to make you feel better, go through your process, and at the end of it, you'll see that sometimes these things that feel like they're earth conquering are something that is not that big, and the things that are putting you in this frantic mood that feeling can subside. But if you just ignore it, you just say, all right, the worst thing you can say is, and I know this from I just know this from dealing with it, is this will pass, it'll be fine, this will pass. Well, nothing ever passes. It just burrows itself in, and then you just keep putting stuff, you just keep mounting on top of that and on top of that and on top of that. Nothing ever just passes. You have to deal with it. You have to directly deal with things, because if you don't, it's going to get 10 times worse.
But Ashley says, it really is physical. My heart races and my breathing shallows. That's how it used to be for me when I let it get to that point. Like, when anxiety goes unchecked, it gets to that point where I've literally checked myself into a hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. It gets to that point.
People die from stress. Like, stress-related things actually happen, whether anxiety, stress, those things are actual physical ailments, and they can deteriorate your health, whether it's gaining weight or anything like that, or causing cardiovascular problems where you literally can have a heart attack or a stroke from some of these things. This isn't we like I said before, we're talking about mental health, but they can have serious physical ramifications sometimes.
Yes, they can. Omar says a lot of the stresses we put on ourselves is from what we were taught as young age or from society. Breaking those chains can really free you, and that's 100% true. Because a lot of fears we have in life are conditioned into us when we're kids, man.
Oh, we're taught. I mean, think about some of these things that kids have to go through. You got to get really good grades as an elementary school so you can place into the advanced courses once you get to junior and high school. Once you get to junior and high school and you get to those advanced classes, you got to perform well in there or you're not going to get into the college you want to go to. And if you don't get into the college you're going to go to, you're going to have to go to some BS school, and your degree's not going to mean it's not going to mean shit, and that means you're not going to get the job you want, and then you're not going to have the life that you want, and you're not going to have the marriage, and you're not going to have the kids, and you're going to die in a gutter. So you better pass this spelling test in second grade or everything's going to go to hell. Think about the stress some of these people are under.
Oh man, that's really escalating quickly. Like you just because you failed the spelling test, you're gonna end up dying alone. Like wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that was a bit over the top, but for some kids, they feel that type of pressure. Maybe they don't think, oh, I'm going to die alone, but they put such pressure on themselves because some of that pressure is put on them, and kids have a way of overreacting, and if you put a little bit of pressure on them, they put a lot of pressure on themselves sometimes.
Yes, they do. Kids have a way. How we looked at things as kids, it's like they were giant or bigger than what they were to us. Because we were small. We were kids. We look at everything as being a bigger issue. Like I'll never forget. We used when I was little. We used to think hot lava was going to be a reoccurring problem in our life, and I've never encountered it at all.
And I freaked out if I lost my recess one day for smart mouthing or anything like that, and I lost my recess for one day. I was a basket case for the next 2 days. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my god, I had restricted recess. I am a terrible kid. And then that eventually, you work through that eventually, but this, because I was talking in class and I lost a half an hour of playtime, to me that might as well have been serving 5 to 10 in a federal penitentiary kind of thing. So you always kind of amplify something when you're a kid.
CB fan says, prop to Jay Buffone, much respect, man. They loved you for coming on. Justin reiterated what I said. He said, I like this. I carry a note to myself in my wallet from non-anxious me to anxious me to ground me in public. Air Jer says, John, great courage speaking and telling your story. It's like going to a speaker meeting at a 12-step program. And Justin says 12-step speaker meetings are great. Heidi comes to the chat room. She says she lost a friend 2 days ago due to stroke stress. I'm very sorry to hear that, Heidi. Everybody in the chat room is sending their condolences.
Yes.
Again, man, stress is something that you can't ignore. If you are in a job, a relationship, you have friendship, you are living somewhere, anything that's causing stress to your life where it starts affecting you physically, you have to do whatever it takes to get yourself out of it.
And you have to, like I said, you gotta deal with it head on, because whether it's a relationship issue, and I myself have I sometimes when you go through whether it's a breakup or losing a loved one or anything like that, it's so easy to just say, I'm not going to address this. I'm going to go on with my normal life. I'm going to pretend like it didn't happen, and I'm just going to go on, and eventually that feeling that I'm trying to avoid will go away, and it's like it never happened, and I'll feel fine. But eventually you find yourself, all of a sudden it explodes. And I, after a breakup once, I put it off for months. Excuse me. I put it off for months. I didn't want to address it for months. I'm like, I'm fine. Everything's good. I don't mind. Everything's fine. And for months and months and months, and I let that build up in me. And one day I'm showering before work, and all of a sudden I don't want to call it a mental breakdown, but I got very emotional. I was in the shower. Nothing out of the ordinary, and all of a sudden all these emotions rushed to me, and I had no idea why. And I was like this, I was a mess, and I had no idea why until I thought about it a little bit, and I said, well, I have been suppressing all of these feelings that I haven't even talked about, and it's what happens. It steeps over. And it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way. Eventually, the pressure builds up and you explode. But if you continue to talk about that, you leave the cap open so that pressure doesn't build up, and you just keep alleviating it and keep alleviating it and keep talking about it. But if you don't, the top usually blows off somehow.
Always, man. I'm sorry to hear that you cried in the shower.
Yeah, it was a mess, man.
So when he said the emotions broke out, I mean he was crying in the shower. So
Yeah, and that's something I've never told anybody. So you guys better feel pretty good about this, because I never told anybody about that.
Breaking news: John Buffone cries in the shower.
Yep, it's true.
Frankie Myers said, "John just laid out my life story with that rant, not the one you just did, but a few minutes ago. Just
spelling test, yeah."
Omar says, I'm an example of that, John, because I have 2 degrees, one in psychology and sociology, and I'm so far from that field today.
Yeah, and it's funny how, you think you have everything set up in your life, and then you take a left turn, and everything is, 180 the other direction.
Heidi says, John, I'm going through that right now. My son is going to Mexico City for law school. He is already losing weight. Dan says, quicksand with an exclamation point in regard to me when I say I thought hot lava was going to be a problem in our life. So, Natty says, yes, you have to deal with it rather than keep it in. I used to just take a walk, and, well, my ex never understood. I had to let it out because I knew that if I kept it in too long, I was going to say or do something that wasn't me. Anxiety can lead to things that you don't usually do. My mom says, good evening. She's late chiming in. Oh, you're only about, 40-some minutes late? Justin, and we had the conversation about this off the air. He said he lost a friend to a drug overdose on Sunday. He says he feels you. He's sending love and comfort to Heidi. So, again, transparency is what it's all about, man. These people, these guys, Justin, Heidi, are coming in. They keep it real, and I talked to him about it, man. And Justin is one of the loyal listeners to the show, and he's been on as a guest. He will be back on. It's about keeping it real, man. That's how you build a support system by keeping it real and let people know what's going on with you. You don't hold it in, because when you hold on what's going in inside you, that's how depression comes. Depression is you not expressing yourself properly. So when you don't express what's going on with you mentally and you hold it in, you bottle it in. That's how these feelings are created inside you. My mom said she dealt with stress this day at work. Mom, don't make me have to drive down there and whoop somebody's ass, because I will, and you know I will. Justin says, second one in 2 weeks span, crazy out there, but that's a whole different discussion. We're going to talk about that. Trust me. Self-talks help a lot, especially while driving. Omar knows that. Tequila says, Alec, thank you for this. Thank you for tuning in. My mom says, friendly firework, got to hold my ground and keep walking. Yeah, I'll come down there. Trust me. It's only a gas, fill up my gas real quick and make that trip. Just said, this was amazing. Thank you all for being here tonight. And John, you're a great guest. I like what you brought, because it doesn't have to be serious to deal with life. Have some fun with it. Alleviates the anxiety and fear. Nashville traffic causes intense levels of stress, and it's raining. Yeah, well, it ain't gonna be traffic when I come down there.
Don't you give Air Jar a free pass who said, breaking news, I take showers. That did not go undetected. I see that in there.
Whoa. Hey, you know what? Come on, man.
I know that I probably give off the idea that I'm more of a, get in the bathtub with a nice bath bomb kind of guy. But no, I'm a pretty big shower daily. Thank you very much, Air Jar.
Oh man, that's wow. Dan says, "Let's talk it out." Pre-workout. This is a crazy mix. So let's listen to Let's Talk It Out and doing pre-workout is getting Dan hyped up. Anna's laughing at the conversation. Tequila says, here in Texas too, glad you're safe. Yeah, Mom, you missed half the conversation. You got to listen back to it. So right now, John, we're at about the 49-minute mark. I could probably go on for another 30 minutes, but I don't know if the listeners wants to go on that much longer. It's typically a 45-minute to an hour show, but this conversation is so good, man. I don't know. Heidi says, thank you so much. No more stoplights for some minutes now. Alec, tell your mom I love her. You can tell her. She's in the chat room. She's literally commenting right above you. Hey, Air says he says you have candles and Kenny G by the tub.
Hey man, I got a flow. Don't mess with it. Whatever centers me, Air Jar, and that's what when I may look like a grizzly bear hopping into the tub, but man, I'm comfortable doing it.
Brittany says we're here. Let's go. Brittany, like the show's always been 45 minutes to an hour. I like to keep it that way. That way people don't have to worry about losing their attention spans. Even though I don't see how you can lose your attention span with this kind of conversation. People spend an hour watching a bunch of grown ass women fight like little kids, but they can't listen to something about mental health and passion. It's kind of it's a little weird. Justin says, anyone needs someone to reach out to, I'm always here. And if you haven't heard it today, you are loved and no one can play your part. You matter. Keep fighting. Amen to that. Amen to that. So, John, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor one last time. Go ahead and let the people know something. Talk about something. Do your thing.
Yeah, and if you're late getting here, or just to kind of put a bow on this, don't let what you do or what people perceive you as be the determining factor of whether or not you talk about your problems, because everybody has problems, and I don't care what your life is, I don't care where you came from, I don't care who you grew up with, or anything like that. Everyone's got problems, and if you don't talk about it, it can fester into something that you never thought imaginable. I cannot believe that me today, I'm a generally happy person, but I have, I've talked about some of my issues going forward, but I still cannot believe that I let things get so out of hand when I was younger that something awful could have happened. And imagine missing out on all these things that I got to do in my life because I just refused to talk about things. I refused to believe that I was wrong, or I refused to believe that I needed to talk about it, or I refused to believe that it wasn't just going to go away. So it's important just to talk, man. And I know we've been reiterating that, and we're let's talk it out is the theme of this podcast. But truer words can't be spoken, because even if you're not, have a high level of depression or a high level of anxiety that needs medication or anything like that, if you don't talk about it, man, things can go south quick. So please find somebody to confide in. Come to this group and talk. And even though we all come from different backgrounds, we can all share similar problems. So that's very, very important.
Brittany's sad that she'll have to wait till next week to hear the next episode. I'm sorry, Brittany. It's just how the business works. Your favorite shows that come on once a week, you gotta wait a whole nother week for it. I'm sorry. That's how it is. Omar says, this is dope, bro. Thanks for texting me earlier. I'll be here every week from now on. Didn't realize I was missing. Love and proud of you. Man, thanks, man, for tuning in, man. Like I said, this show, I'm excited to see which direction it goes in. I'm excited to have guests like John come on and share such a passionate word and open up like how he did for you guys. Ashley says, seriously, thank you for this. I wish I listened sooner. The past episodes are available if you want them. Dan says, remember, life is always worth living, and today is a better day because you are here. Yes, it is. The more of you guys that there are out there, the better. Tequila says, thanks for telling your story, John. You're amazing. Airjair says, Trey and John, you guys are great. I know I joked off, but damn, I need to hear all of this tonight. Heidi says, in all capital letters, thank you, John and Trey. Justin says, amen, Dan. And my mom said, Brittany, have some good questions for next week. Yeah, we bring them. You bring them, because next week, man, I have a guest coming on. As usual, we're going to bring the heat. You guys know how I do. So, what John's saying, what he had to say, and what I'm saying, what I had to say, I just want, again, thank you guys for coming on. And I look forward to talking to you guys next week on the next episode of Let's Talk It Out.